So we didn't tell anybody, and I didn't even start planning the wedding until after his daughter got married on December. So she got married on the 17th. We told everyone we were getting married on the 19th, and we got married on Christmas Eve. And I planned my wedding in 5 days.
Love stories fill us with joy and inspire hope for the future. And a true life romance can remind us that sometimes just one spark is all it takes to change everything. Welcome to Unexpected Love Stories. I'm your host, Dawn Prushkovsky, and we have a wonderful story for you today. It truly defines, to me, unexpected love. And my guest is Kelli Masters, Reneau. You're going to love her. She's a trailblazer in the sports industry. She's an attorney, an NFL agent. She's a business owner, and she is the founder of High Impact Life Ministries. She's an author, check out her book, and a speaker. Kelli was named one of the most influential women in sports business, and she's made history as the very first woman to represent a top 5 NFL draft pick, which I'm sure that my son-in-law will be excited to know about that. Kelli's true passion, though, is inspiring others, not just with her victories, but with her challenges and her faith. Hello, Kelli. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me today, Dawn. I'm really excited about this.
I'm so excited, too. This isn't usually the kind of speech that you give, but I think it's really important. This is, I'll tell the listeners, I was telling Kelli that when she shared her story with me a year ago, her story is actually the thing that put the seed inside of me that said, these stories have to be told. So, yes, it's wonderful. So she's a trailblazer, but she's also someone who trailblazed in my life now. Okay, so I wanted to know, a lot of times I start by saying, so how the two of you meet, but you need to go back a little bit.
I do.
Before you get there. So.
And thank you so much for, this really is unique for me. I really don't get a chance to talk about this specific topic. I do some when I do women's gatherings with my women's ministry, but I've never done, when I get invited to give a talk or do an interview, it's always about, my work in sports or my work as an attorney. And this is really special. So yes, so when we met, and I don't know if your listeners will get to hear this story, but we met when I decided to do a prayer walk in Las Vegas the morning of the Super Bowl in 2024, I guess it was. And I didn't know what it was going to be like. It was just, I just felt led to do it and reached out and said, anyone that wants to join me, please come. And we had a handful of people, including Dawn, that showed up. And we had a great time walking down the Las Vegas Strip, praying over the city and over the sports world and over our nation. And I'm just really excited to see all that's happening since then. And did another prayer walk at this year's Super Bowl, and we ended up with over 1,000 people by the end of the walk.
That's crazy.
It's amazing that Dawn, you and I could be part of the beginning of something so special. My husband and I have been married for 7 years now. But I've known him pretty much my entire life, since I was maybe 7 years old. And it sounds really super weird if you compress time, but it is a long, amazing story that only God could have written it. Only God could have designed my life and the life that we have together. And I'm truly blessed and truly just humbled and grateful to have such a remarkable husband. So I met my now husband, years ago when I was really, really young. We grew up in the same community. He is older than I am, almost 15 years older than I am. So didn't really, never really were in school together. Our families knew each other, and I always heard of him as just being an outstanding person, but was never someone I really knew that well. I just knew of him. And he was a very outstanding athlete. He was outstanding at everything he did. He was great in music. He was a singer. He was, a music major at the University of Oklahoma. He was a tremendous athlete and played football and was getting recruited at all the big schools to play football. But unfortunately, that dream fell short because it was discovered when he was, I think, junior or senior in high school, that he only had one kidney. And at the time, the NCAA would not allow an athlete that was missing a vital organ to compete at the next level. They would not allow him to play college ball. And so he went from having all these dreams of playing college football and maybe in the NFL to nothing overnight. And so he ended up going to the University of Oklahoma, majoring in music, ended up getting married, and started having a family. And they ended up having 11 children, 9
Wow.
daughters, 2 sons. And in the meantime, I knew them. I was, I looked, again, always looked up to him and his family, truly. Even watching, as they raised child after child after child, and all their kids were outstanding. Just had a great admiration for this, my perception, this godly family and this incredible life that they built with remarkable children who were all raised in the church and competing in sports and participating in music. They just did a remarkable job as parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched all of this and just always had that admiration for them. Again, never, ever in a million years thinking that I would be part of his life, other than just admiring them and what they stood for. Dale was, he believed in me. His father was an attorney. I became an attorney, grew up, became an attorney. Also went to the University of Oklahoma, started my law practice, and Dale's father, Dale Sr., there's lots of Dales in this story. There's Dale, his dad, Dale, who's now my husband, and Dale the third is one of my stepsons. But Dale Sr. was a very prominent, very respected attorney here in Oklahoma City where I live. And so I always looked up to him. He was somewhat of a mentor to me in the legal profession. And Dale Jr., now my husband, believed in me. Actually, he and his entire family, we just had great friendship. So much so that when I was in law school and I was really struggling, not with school. Well, I guess I was struggling with school, and I'd always been a straight A student, and suddenly law school was super hard. And I found myself going, wait a minute, I'm not the student I thought I was. But I also, and I think I shared this with you, I'd reached a real point of just wanting to give up. I had been looking for purpose in achievement and in awards and titles, and I had lived an accomplished life, but I was miserable and I was empty and I was really hopeless about my future. And honestly, Dale and his wife at that time, his first wife, were such examples to me of they both, they raised their children right. They honored God, and in a way that I had never seen. And in growing up, I had gone to church, but I had never seen what it looked like to have a real relationship with Jesus. And I quite honestly didn't think that that was something that was available to me. I thought maybe that was for just super special, super spiritual people. Because my performance mindset was I have to earn everything, and I just thought of myself as not talented enough or good enough to have a relationship with God. And they were one of the examples in my life, an early example of living for Jesus. And so they believed in me. He actually was an early investor in my sports agency and believed in
Oh,
what I was doing and supported me in that. That's, yeah. So from a business standpoint and just being a godly person, I really looked up to him and his family. One of his sons, Dale the third, actually came to work for me in the baseball side of things while I was building my company. And so I'd always, again, had this admiration for Dale and his family. And then a number of years ago, things started to really crumble in his life. And not to go into a ton of detail, but he ended up, he ended up being a single dad. And his his first wife, and I always want to honor her because she
Mhm.
11 children. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be pretty amazing to do that and to be a mom at that level, and a mom at any level, but to have that many children. But she wanted a different life and chose to pursue that. And I watched this rock of a human being be such a strong father. And even, he was jokingly called a cheer mom because a lot of he had 9 daughters and a lot of them were cheerleaders. And he was the one at all the meetings with the cheer mom. So he was sort of this honorary cheer mom. And I watched just in awe as this heartbroken man rose up and was so strong for his kids and for his family, and really fought for that marriage and fought for his family. And at the end of the day, I think just felt, because he couldn't save it, just felt very defeated and very depressed. At the same time, he was the most godly, faith filled, joy filled man that I'd ever been around. And I remember at one point telling Dale the third, who was working for me, his son, like, we really need to pray for your dad to have a new
Mhm.
wife. Right? Like, God needs to, like, I'm believing that God is going to bring him an amazing woman that step into this seemingly impossible role and be a stepmother to 11 children and grandmother and support this amazing man that had
Mhm.
truly devoted his life to ministry and to serving, and just such a remarkable human being. And I had no idea when I was telling his son this and I was praying and believing for God to bring a wife for Dale that it was going to be me. So that's the crazy. And again, it can sound crazy because I knew them and I knew his first wife, and was always so blown away by them and by their faith. And then to see things fall apart for him, I was heartbroken for them. And then just believed that God was going to meet the need. So the other side of the story, and I'm sorry, I don't even remember what the question was you asked me, but I just launched in.
It's okay. Go for it. Just keep going.
So that's his side of what was going on in his life. In my
Mhm.
life, the relationships that I had been in, boyfriend after boyfriend, trying to find my husband, trying to accomplish all these big goals that I set for myself, trying to be excellent at everything, had left me really broken and really empty. And I didn't know that God was going to make me wait until I was 44 years old to finally say, okay, now you're ready. And now I have brought this man that you're supposed to marry. So for 20 years, I waited and I watched every other person in my life find love. And maybe not all of them did it the right way, but to me, it was like, man, everybody's getting to get married and have wedding showers and have babies and baby showers and live out my dreams.
Are you craving a love story that defies all the odds? Well, check out my other podcast, Love Unexpected, where I share my unbelievable journey of how I met my husband. You see, I went on this whirlwind 2-week tour in Europe, and I returned to the States engaged. And that was just the beginning. We didn't see each other again until 17 days before the wedding. This story is just packed with twists, leaps of faith, an unforgettable romance. So join me in finding love unexpected, where love always finds a way. You can listen now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This whole time I had looked at Dale, my now husband, just to be clear. I had always looked at him not in a romantic way at all, not in an attractive, like I was never, and people have tried to, including, people that just were very much listened to the enemy and tried to
Mhm.
thwart marriage, tried to make it into this thing of, oh, you were plotting this all along. Like he was
Oh,
in your company and you ingrained yourself with his dad as a mentor to you because you were plotting this. I'm like, absolutely not.
that's
And
quite a
so
stretch. Yeah.
stretch. And so, but I just had such reverence and respect for him and his family for so
Mhm.
long. Never ever saw him in that light. And I had this idea of what God was going to bring me. And would start, trying to have godly dating relationships, and nothing ever really worked out. And so I really never had a serious relationship after I became a believer, because I was waiting on God to bring my husband. I could figure out pretty quickly, okay, this is a friend who is in my life, but not for that reason.
Mhm.
And so I just stayed trusting God to bring a relationship into my life. So I wasn't, really dated around, but it just wasn't, it never got past just having dinner and going, you're a nice person, but you're not God's man for me. And so I waited and waited and waited. And then my Dale Sr., retired from his law practice, and his health went down very quickly. He was in his 80s, and his son, Dale, took care of him in those last, months of his life. And it was during those months, this was in 2017.
Mhm.
It was during those months that my husband spent a lot of time, my now husband, wasn't my husband then, spent a lot of time. And his dad's health was, as it was deteriorating, he was speaking less and less. But interestingly enough, the biggest thing that we all saw with Dale Sr. is, you know how some people in their later years, as they're not feeling well, they kind of get grumpy and mean. He was the opposite. He became very loving, very sweet, almost angelic, and just wanted to tell everyone he loved them, wanted to make sure that he had been a good dad, that he'd been a good grandfather, that he'd been a good friend. And he cared so much about just loving on the people in his life. And the last conversation that he had before he stopped talking and shortly thereafter passed away was a conversation with Dale Jr. And Dale had just spent the day with him. He left, and his dad's hospice caretaker called him and said, "You need to come back. Your dad wants to talk to you." And so he went back and had a conversation with his dad, and it was the most beautiful conversation. They just talked about his life. They talked about heaven. They talked about, obviously, preparing for the funeral. But he looked at Dale and said, "You're one thing that I have to know before I go is I need to know that my oldest son is happy." And Dale was like, told his dad, I'm joyful. Jesus is enough for me. And he said, "No, you are letting your heartbreak dictate life. You are letting the hurt keep you locked up, and you are not happy." And he said, "God has spoken to me that you need to move on. You need to get remarried. And he's told me that the woman that you need to marry is Kelli Masters."
Oh,
Blue, totally and out of the blue. And Dale was like, "What?" And quite honestly, not to make it sound super weird, but I'd always considered Dale Jr. sort of a father figure. He was a business mentor. He was a spiritual mentor. I looked up to him. He wasn't old enough to be my dad, but he was kind of a father figure in my life.
Well, and you'd watched him father all these people. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I had, my relationship with my father had been somewhat difficult. And so to have someone in my life that was such a great father, that's the regard that I held him in. And so quite honestly, it caught him off guard when his dad said, "This is who you should marry. This is who God is saying you should marry." Dale didn't know what to do with that. And so he passed away, and then he had the conversation with me, and he said, "I need to tell you what my dad said." And he said, "Before I tell you, I just have to ask you a question. Have you ever had any feelings for me?" And I went, like, as a dad? He's like, "No, like romantic." And I kind of went, like, "No, ew, no. No, I have never, I'm so sorry, but no, I've never seen you in that light." That's like, at the moment, I was like, "Ew, no." And I said, I've always had such a respect for you as a person and as a father, and even watching you as a husband fighting for your marriage. I've always had such respect for you, and I was heartbroken for you, but no, sorry." And he said, "Well, that's what my dad thinks. My dad thought that God really wanted us together." And I said, I love your dad, but maybe he was just, he wasn't doing well in his last days. Maybe he was delusional. Maybe. But as I was saying that, I was so convicted. And my husband kind of looked at Dale, not my husband yet, rejected, which now I understand why, because he had been praying. He said, "Well, just pray about it." And so I went home that night. I think I shared that with you. I went home that night the whole way, sort of not wanting to ask God because I already kind of knew the answer. And I got home and I got in my prayer place and I just said, God, I don't see this. Like, I'm not feeling this. But if this is you, you're going to have to show me.
Mhm.
And almost instantly, it was just this strong conviction and peace, not feelings yet,
Mhm.
but strong conviction and peace. Yes, this is me. This is my voice. This is your husband. Dale is your husband. And you can either receive it or you can keep running from it. And I also knew in that moment I had a choice. And it opened my eyes to thinking, I was sitting in that moment of knowing, that God had just revealed who my husband was, which was something I had been waiting my entire life to hear.
Mhm.
I had a choice. I could say, it just doesn't seem right. And I thought, oh my gosh, people are going to think this, people are going to think that. Like,
Mhm.
I thought you saw him as a dad. Now, ew, like, why are you marrying him? And he's so much older than you, and this doesn't make sense. And I really wrestled with, God, I know this is you, but I just don't know if I'm ready for this to be the answer.
Mhm.
But I also knew that when I surrendered my life and I said, God, I'm going to trust you no matter what you tell me to do, that it was my entire walk with God, he's asked me to step out and do things that I didn't feel ready to do. And that seemed kind of crazy. And this definitely was one of those moments. And so I said yes to God. And a few days later, I said yes to Dale. And we never actually dated. No one knew that we had had that conversation. One of his daughters was getting married in December, that God was dealing with both of us, that we were supposed to get married that Christmas. And I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
that doesn't make sense. Like, we're not going to take away from your daughter's wedding. We can't tell anybody. So we didn't tell anybody. And I didn't even start planning the wedding until after his daughter got married on December. So she got married on the 17th. We told everyone we were getting married on the 19th, and we got married on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
And
wow.
I planned my wedding in 5 days. 4 years, and then I planned my wedding in 5 days. But it was the most beautiful, perfect day. I could not have asked for a better, a better day or a better experience, because I was just ready to say yes. And Dale had prepared. I mean, God had prepared me my entire life to be Dale's wife.
Mhm.
And it was in that moment that I stepped into obedience and did. And quite frankly, didn't really have those butterflies and those like in love feelings for him. When I said yes, I just said yes because I knew that's who God wanted me to marry. And I respected him and I had a love for him. And I just said, God, you're going to have to take what I have and make it what it's supposed to be and make me the wife that I'm supposed to be. And now I'm very happy to say we are more in love every single day. We cherish our relationship. We honor each other. Our relationship is based on just this amazing godly friendship where we honor each other. Not that we don't disagree about things, but we rarely fight about everything. We communicate really, really well. And when people say, what's the secret to your marriage being so strong? I'm like, it's number one, we got married because God said to, not because of crazy feelings.
Mhm.
So that's foundational to our marriage. But then also both spend a lot of time in prayer and we communicate constantly, and
Mhm.
that's been the key. So that's my crazy, unexpected love story.
Well, can I go back to a couple of things and
Yeah,
highlight some stuff? Okay,
yeah,
so I love that, first of all, when he talked to you, you said, "What?" I
yeah.
just ooh, um, but at the same time, something was clicking inside of you.
Yes,
Kind of like God's kind of stirring something inside.
yes.
And I think what I love, and I'm trying to get across with a lot of these podcasts, is that when God brings the right one, I
Hmm.
think the thing that I hear most often is there was a peace.
Yeah.
There was no butterflies.
Right.
There wasn't this, oh my gosh, he's so gorgeous, or
Fireworks. Yeah, I know.
exactly. It's not that windswept,
No.
passion thing. It's always just like, this is such a peace. This is right. And it's
Yes.
something that it just fills you up. It's like, this
Yeah.
is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And it's I think because it's peaceful, it's easier to move forward with it, because then there's kind of like, there's not a doubt at
Right.
that point.
Right.
Um, and there's not so much a fear either,
Right.
because of so many past heartbreaks. We'll have fear of another heartbreak, another
Oh, yeah.
breakup,
Just
and
the
things like that.
baggage and the soul ties and all of that. And yeah, and when it is the right person, when it is God's right person for you, the peace is there, and perfect love casts out fear. And you're never going to meet, no one's perfect. Like, none of us are perfect. Only Jesus was and is perfect. But when you are in the middle of God's will and He brings that person, that is the perfect person for you. And
Mhm.
that casts out fear. God's love casts out fear.
Mhm. And I love too how you said you had a choice. I
Yeah.
could say yes to this,
Yeah.
and God wouldn't be mad at me if I
Oh,
chose no. He wouldn't love me any less. He wouldn't punish me. He wouldn't,
right.
anything like that. But am I going to say yes to, like, here's a gift, honey?
Right.
Do you want the gift? I want to
Exactly.
give you something.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, and we do. We have a choice.
Okay, so since you didn't have like the butterflies,
Yeah.
when did you decide and you decide to say yes? And when did um, you go like, I love you? And when did you guys like start to actually verbalize, I love you?
That's
What?
good. You know what's funny? I had a love for him, I don't even know if it's like an agape love. Like, I had a respect and a love for him as a human being.
Mhm,
And my friends, all of my friends will tell you this, my clients, my even my fellow agents, NFL agents who work for KMM, my company, I tell everyone I love them. Like that,
mhm,
that's not, some people grew up in a family that no one said that I love you. I say it all the time, and I mean it. It's not like
mhm,
I it's not like I say it flippantly, but I genuinely have a love for people, and I don't like it. I don't like not saying it. And so saying I love you to Dale came pretty naturally because I did love him. But saying I love you as your wife and I want to be with you and I want to build a life with you was a bigger step. I said yes to marrying him before I felt like I could say I love you as a wife. I love you as a partner. I don't know that I reached that point of being able to say that with all my heart until our wedding day. And
mm,
I never doubted that I would become that. I never doubted God's will and that He had spoken to me to do this. I knew I had to hear from God personally. I couldn't
mhm,
just say, well, he heard from God and his dad heard from God. I needed to know. And so, knowing and hearing in my spirit God dealing with me, saying, this is your husband, I never had a doubt. But it was on my wedding day, and I literally was so emotional that it's just happy tears all day long. From the moment I woke up, I couldn't wait to say my vows and tell him I loved him. And we our first kiss was in front of everybody, at our and it was a very, very sweet. The first thing we did when we got married, obviously, he announced, husband and wife. I got my first kiss from him, and then we took communion together. And that was how we felt. And then we celebrated Christmas because it was on Christmas Eve, and
mm,
we go back actually every single year on Christmas Eve at 2:30, which was when we said our vows, and we do a little champagne toast together, and it's almost like we renew our vows every single year, same place, in front of the Christmas tree that we got married in front of. And it's just a really special memorial to that moment. But that was the day when I could say, I love you and I want to be your wife.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. How about some other things?
Yeah.
11 kids. How do you tell 11 children?
You know the scene in Sound of Music, which ironically was released 60 years ago today. One of my favorite movies, also one of Dale's favorite movies. And they talk about when they figure out that they're in love, the first thing they say is, "We've got to tell the children." It
Mhm.
was challenging. It was kind of split, and I think I gave a lot of grace to the daughters. The two sons were like, "Heck yeah, like Dad, this is awesome." And they are two of my dear friends too. So we have kind of the running joke where, like the line from the movie Step Brothers, where if we're all having a conversation, they'll say, "Well, you're mom now." So, about anything. So they
Mhm.
like teasing me that I'm their stepmom, even though, my oldest stepson is 42 years old. My youngest stepson is just turned 39. So we're pretty close in, I'm in my 50s. So it's, I'm not old enough to be their mom, but
Mhm.
I'm old enough to be their stepmom without it being super weird. But they're great. They were like gung ho from the beginning. The youngest couple of girls were ecstatic, couldn't wait. Actually, Sydney, who at the time was 17, who just got married a few weeks ago, she was 17 at the time. She became my wedding planner immediately. I was just going to. She's like, "No, you need a dress, you need flowers." She took my credit card and went to the flower shop and ordered a cake, and she made everything special for that day. And so the youngest two were great. The middle girls, and when you're dealing with 9 girls and a lot of emotions and a lot
Mhm.
of estrogen and personalities, all very strong
Yep.
personalities, it was challenging, and we had to work through that. And I was very clear with all of them that I was not taking anyone's place. I was just going to be there to love them, to serve them, to fulfill, whatever roles or responsibilities I needed to in the family, just as a
Mhm.
member of the family. And I would be loving and I would be kind to them. But I was not going to force myself or force them into um, treating each other a certain way. I gave them a
Yeah.
ton of grace. And it has been a challenge. We've worked through almost all of them. We've worked through challenges. There's still, a daughter needs a mom, and
Mhm.
they want
Yeah.
to have that relationship with their mom. And I am very encouraging of that. It has been challenging, but I have done my best. And I've also done my best to model to them what a loving relationship looks like. There's coming from divorce can be very, very hard on
Mhm.
kids, no matter what age, young or older, divorced parents. I didn't have to experience that, but I watched other people in my life and how much it hurt and how much it also could affect how you treat each other. And I realized when Dale and I got married and there were still 3 kids at home, I realized that I needed to set a great example of a loving relationship and how to treat their father,
Yes.
and model that for them, and model this is how loving people treat each other.
Mhm.
And I was a little shocked that I had to, step into that role and fulfill that, because I just assumed that everything was going to be easy, and it wasn't easy at first, but it has become so wonderful now, and
Yep.
very grateful. And my encouragement to step parents is, have so much grace for
Mhm.
yourself, so much grace for the kids, and be patient, and also do a lot of praying, a lot of praying.
Yeah. See, now you're speaking to me because I stepped into being a stepmom when I got
Mm, yeah,
married, and
yeah,
I gave myself no grace. And I spent
hard.
every night literally on my knees at Sarah's bed crying
Yeah,
and
uh,
apologizing. She's asleep, so she didn't even hear, but I'm just like, "I messed up so bad today. I'm so sorry," but again, yeah, I didn't give myself any grace whatsoever.
Mhm.
So I agree. Give yourself grace, give them grace.
Yeah.
It's something so important. I think also, I was maybe in a different situation because she was 8 when we got married, but I didn't realize that step parents or parents in general, parents need to have some downtime. They
Yes.
need they need to have some
All the time. Yeah.
instead of being on. Yeah, I was on all the time for, teaching school, teaching dance, having the kids, having everything was just on, doing the laundry, making sure dinner was on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You do. You have to take time. And for me, that I've never been a morning person, but I made myself become a morning person. I may have shared this with you. Like when I first got married, I had been living by myself for so long that
Mhm.
waking up in a house with other people was really shocking to me. Like, wait, there's like already like things happening in this house and people that need to eat. And oh my goodness, it's not just me anymore. So I had to start planning. Okay, get up early so I can go get my prayer time and spend time with the Lord. Spend my me time going to work out or going for a run or just taking that time for myself. I realized that was so important because you can't pour from an empty cup and you can't be on go, go, go all the time. You have to take time for yourself because then you're going to be a better wife and you're going to be a better mom and stepmom.
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Let me just say really quickly, friends, I know that you're enjoying hearing Kelly's story and that you're going to really enjoy seeing Kelly and Dale's wedding photos. And you can find them on our website. That's unexpectedlovestories.com. The link is in our show notes. It's down below. And while you're there, I want you to check out, I have a special gift for you. It's a beautiful downloadable guide to help you document your love story. And while you're at the website, would you please share your love story with us? Because maybe we'll have you on the podcast. So go there, go see Kelly and Dale's wedding photos. Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Yay. Okay.
Yes.
So you said you've been married how long?
7 years.
7 years now. Wow.
Yes.
And it's been amazing, I'm sure.
Yes. We got married, yeah, at the end of 2017. So, pandemic happened early in our marriage, which actually
Mm.
I loved. I hated so much about that and what happened, but I personally loved spending 24/7 with my husband.
Mhm.
And it was so great because of both of us being older, we were so set in our ways when we got married. I already had I'd get up and go to the office and didn't really feel like I got to spend as much time with him. We never went on a honeymoon. Life was just busy. Being an NFL agent, we got married on Christmas Eve, and then the day after Christmas, I left for all of the college bowl games and going to
Mm.
sign new clients and was pretty much gone for 2 months. And that was hard to be brand new married, trying to sort of navigate this new life, but not really getting to spend time together. And so during COVID was really the time when we were like, oh, wow, this is what it's like to be around each other all the time. So I treasured those months together. And it's still something that I realized after not being married for so long and then getting married was I had gotten into a pattern where I would work all day, I would come home, I would make dinner, and then I would sit down and eat dinner while working, and then I would keep working until I went to sleep. And when you're married and you have someone in your life that is your partner, that's just, I mean, there are some nights when I do still have to work late or I have to travel. But when I get home, the minute I get home, the Holy Spirit always convicts me to, okay, let's pray out of your day. Let's leave work and the stress and all of the things during the day at the door. Walk in and be the wife that your husband needs
Mhm.
and be present. And don't just immediately get on your phone or get on your computer or start watching a show or whatever. Take time to spend with your husband. And that was very convicting to me. And I had to learn how to do that, how to shut off work and be a present wife and spend time with him and prioritize him. And it became so obvious to me that a lot of people sort of have their life, have their career, and then they sort of try to make time,
Yeah.
in the leftovers for each other, for their spouse. When really it should be the opposite. It should be our marriage and our life together should be the foundation of our life. And then we should sort of build the activities and the work around that. And even though I spend more time at the office than I do at home, or I spend more time on the road than I do at home, um, my marriage and my husband is a priority to me. Spending our time, even having intimate time every day, regardless of what that looks like, is so important. That is the glue to your marriage. And if you look up and suddenly you realize, hey, we haven't even really like had a date or talked or kissed in 3 weeks, like what's happening? Like, what are we doing? That's where the enemy can get involved. And so we are it is very important to us. We do, every single morning we have time. We have our individual prayer times, and then we come together to pray together over everything on a weekly basis. We set aside a couple of hours and have a time of reports where I fill him in on everything that's happening. He fills me in on, like, just to make sure that we are communicating, we are on the same page on everything. And yeah, I think those are ways you can keep your marriage strong and keep the enemy kicked out. And I just can't imagine having a marriage that I'm not doing those things. It would be very difficult to maintain a strong marriage without that.
I love that. Okay, one last thing before we end. Is there any advice that you'd give to someone who is looking for love?
Yeah. So I remember at one point, I think in my late 30s, and mind you, I was still, in my late 30s, I was still years and years away from getting married. And I remember going, God, where are all of the great, like, potential spouses? Where are they? Where are all the great men out there? I was so discouraged, thinking, I still was trusting God, but I'm like, man, there's not a selection. And the Holy Spirit immediately, it was almost as if it was audible. It was so loud. And my spirit said, Kelli, you only need one. You don't need a selection. Only need one. And it will be the right one. And the last thing you want to do is push to make something work with the wrong person. Nothing will take you off course more than doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that so anchored me. And oh my goodness, I don't need a selection. I don't need a smorgasbord of men. I just need one. And I need to know he is the one that God has for me. My other fear was, what if I miss it? What if I'm supposed to meet my husband at this conference and I don't go? Or what if he's going to be at this restaurant and I'm running late and then I miss him? So I had this silly fear of, God's going to have this perfect man for me and I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to miss it. You're not going to miss it. God is going to knock you upside the head. This is him. Or if a man is listening, this is her. You are not going to miss it. So God has someone for you. You're not going to miss it.
No, you're right. And if you do, he'll make sure they cross your path once again. Yes.
He will. God will not let something that important pass you by.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible story. How can people who've been moved by your story connect with you?
So you can go to any of my social media. I'm on Instagram at Kelli Masters, Kelli with an I, Masters like the golf tournament. And I'm on Twitter/X at KMM Sports. And I do have a website, kellimasters.com.
All right. We're going to make sure we put that website on our website so that people can find you. All right. Well, Kelli, your journey, it really shows us that love isn't always predictable.
True.
But when it's real, it's going to find the way. God is going to bring it. Yeah, that was lovely. Friends, Again, if this story moved you, then I'm going to ask you to follow this podcast. Just leave a review and write a comment about it. And it's going to really help us a lot because your interaction actually puts our podcast in front of more people. And the best thing you can do actually is go and share this podcast with someone who loves love stories like us. Remember, you can find out more about Kelli on our website, unexpectedlovestories.com. The link's in the show notes. And I'm Dawn Pruszkowski. And this has been Unexpected Love Stories. As you know, sometimes the best love stories are the ones we never, ever see coming. And we'll see you next time. Much love to you.